All right, everyone. Trump has now made the decision to label Antifa as a terrorist organization. This has been done in a couple of states. Like, I think New Jersey was the first one, which is funny because I think it's mainly a blue state. Funny, Chris Christie, the outlier there. I bet that they wish they had just gone with a Democrat on that one. You know, he sucked up all the food. People in New Jersey lost weight because there wasn't enough to eat. Anyway, here's my thoughts on that. I would say, in part, I'm for this because action clearly needs to be taken. Antifa at this point has begun on a larger level due to political movements, political paradigms shifting over the last few years, is trying to destabilize the West, and they're very forthcoming about their goals. They want to destroy capitalism and the United States at large and usher in their idea of revolution, so to speak. The way that they choose to do that is through attempting to organize riots and so forth to destabilize the fabric of Western society. See, the thing is, like, I guess they want Beijing to run the world because they think that would be good. At least they can still get their Apple products, and they'll probably be cheaper. But that's what they want. It's just the Apple revolutionaries. Here's my thoughts, though. In one sense, well, technically in two senses, I oppose this, strictly speaking. The first is that Antifa, while it is definitely a gang, it is organized, and it's funny to see people on the left pretending like they're not an organization. Oh, it's not a movement, it's an idea. No. They organize publicly. I can point out examples. They have Facebook pages, Twitter pages, and so forth, Discords, and they organize. That is not an idea, that is a political movement. They have manifestos and manuals and everything else. This is a political movement. They are a terrorist organization in the general sense of how they're motivated. Their whole goal, the destruction of civilization, essentially, it goes beyond gang violence. But I would label them a gang instead, because my problem is the use of the classification terrorist in order to provide a workaround, especially to the Fourth Amendment, has been misused already by government. There are orders that are considered terroristic that are clearly not, and there are groups like Antifa that kind of are that aren't labeled so. In a general sense, though, I do not believe that the government should have the authority to unilaterally declare a group to be terroristic simply because of its motivations, let alone looking at its actions, which Antifas are quite violent, but I'll discuss that. Also, there's some minutia there in a moment. The government should not be able to work around the First and Fourth Amendments, strictly speaking, superseding the 10th in the sense of federal level bureaucracy at times, simply by artificially declaring a person to be part of an organization that it feels to be terroristic. For instance, let's say someone in Antifa has never actually done anything violent. They're not part of that. They just want to wear the uniform and go get the free, soy lattes or something. They're not actually fanatic at all. They just loosely assemble in this organization. They are not engaged in terrorist activity. You can call them terrorist adjacent, but how's that any different than like hate adjacent, like because I talked to Richard Spencer or something? It's an artificial classification that makes no sense and has no actual pragmatic meaning to it. I would label them a gang because they clearly are. The other part is you have to look pragmatically at the on-the-ground effects of what they do. Most of the time, Antifa's riots are geared 99% towards property damage. The intent is not to take human life, generally speaking. Of course, that's a totally different class of crimes. When that begins happening, it causes the police to get involved and quell the riot much more quickly. There's an attempt, at least on the front end, it seems, to avoid killing people. Now, beating people up, burning buildings and stuff, those are all significant crimes, but they're not the same as attempting to murder somebody. Generally speaking, Antifa themselves, if there's any deaths at these riots, it's not Antifa killing them. Like, you see a mob beating people to death in Dallas. Antifa probably, none of their members were involved in the actual attacks there. They were involved in creating the riot. They were involved in creating, it's sort of like yelling fire in a crowded theater and then someone dies in the stampede. Well, you didn't kill them, but you kind of did. It is, though, a little bit different. And labeling them a gang, by the way, would clear up, I would think, local and state resources more to take care of the problem as opposed to getting it at the federal level. The problem is this would be a top-level classification of them as a terroristic organization. I think also, in a way, it sharpens their political capabilities. Because of the nature of the group being as it is, if the government's run by Trump, then wouldn't this push people that are on the margins of the far left maybe further towards supporting this group? I guess the idea is that they're trying to go after the money that backs Antifa. Because again, as an organization, an organized movement, which they are, the leftists denying that at this point, you've got to have something seriously wrong with you when you're trying to deny observable reality that literally anyone can go on Facebook, look up and see. I can literally go to Antifa's accounts online. I guess the whole idea is to find out who funds them and try to prosecute them. Ramsey brought this up. The problem with that, and this is why it defeats the purpose of labeling them a terrorist organization, we sort of kind of know where their money's coming from. It comes from the top echelon of the far left, the George Soros types. Because these types of people don't like capitalism. They want artificial monopolies, and that requires more centralized government. It requires socialism. That being said, these people are so massively wealthy and powerful and have so many political connections, they can hide the fact that they're funding Antifa or similar groups. They can hide the fact they'll use a slush fund. Dude, the Clintons used to absorb millions in Chinese money. They just use a slush fund. It's quite simple. You have a bunch of companies bouncing the money back and forth and laundering it over and over in an obviously criminal manner, but one that you can't exactly trace and therefore can't exactly prosecute. A free market suppressed is a black market. Dude, there's definitely a profit motive in people who are scummy and globalistic to back violent thugs, but you're not going to be able to trace the money. The idea, oh, George Soros is going to jail now, that's pie in the sky, dude. I hate to tell you, that's not going to happen. It's just not realistic. Unfortunately, Antifa will keep getting its funding. No, you handle it on the ground level by using law enforcement. It's essentially, trust me, the police won't be pulled back from actually beating down the rioters if part of that rioting group has been declared a criminal gang. It gives them more of a modus to go in there and actually fucking do something. Right now, you have idiots like the mayor of Minneapolis holding their cops back from even getting involved and saying, well, it's too violent, let it peter itself out. Yeah, half the city's burning, that's okay. Well, that shouldn't be happening. What we need are better guidelines with regards to policing in riots, both to protect property and to protect as well innocent bystanders. You have that one girl there's hit with a rubber bullet because she was walking near a mob of people on her way home. It's like, there are only so many ways to get home, possibly. If the mob had been dispersed, this wouldn't have happened. But, of course, the police aren't necessarily allowed to do their fucking job. Fucking Portland is doing a better job than Minneapolis right now. They should be shamefaced. That's basically Antifa's main breeding ground, I think. Isn't that basically their world headquarters at this point in Portland? Or Oakland or something, maybe? Some of these other locations. It's like it's not as much of a New York thing as a lot of West Coast sentiment, I suppose. And apparently in Minneapolis at this point. I'm not sure that declaring them a terrorist organization will really be helpful because the primary goal, which could be to go after their money, I just don't see panning out. If anything, you get a bunch of middleman fall guys, money coordinators that'll take the fall because they know that once they get out of the prison, out of the brig, they get $1 million from George Soros or something. Yeah, it'd be a wonderful world if we could actually hold, the higher level people in society to account. The problem is, and again, I keep going back to this saying, this old Vermont adage, the law is like a spider's web. The flies are caught, the hornets go free. And George Soros and people like that are big fat fucking hornets with big fat fucking dripping venomous stingers. And they want to use those stingers to harm society. Putting another spider's web in their way is not going to stop them. Get the pesticide. Go after their hive, their little horde on the ground, declare them a criminal gang, and disperse them. Unmask them and publicly shame them as the rioting thugs that they are, that have at this point nothing to do with George Floyd. You think they give a fucking half a shit about it? They're happy that George Floyd died. It gave them an opportunity to spread riots and violence to dozens of U.S. cities. See, they're actually happy right now. I wonder if these communities understand how much the far left actually fucking hates them and loves it when they suffer. They don't want to take care of police brutality. If we took care of police brutality, what the fuck would they antagonize over? They wouldn't fucking exist. Half of these bored, white, middle-class liberals that comprise Antifa and their Starbucks Marxist fuckwad crowd would disperse. They'd go home. Oh, there's no police brutality anymore. Things are getting better. They'd get complacent. The whole goal is constant antagonism. Find something that people think is wrong with society and then get them whipped up into a frenzy, break a few windows, and hope they go crazy. That's what they do. That's a gang. It's not necessarily terrorists, though. That's about all. Peace out.